The recruitment officer stared at me, like I had just vomited acid onto his pristine desk. "You want to enroll," he said, his 3 eye stalks quivering, with what I could only assume was barely suppressed laughter, "in the Galactic Defense Academy." "That is correct," I replied, keeping my voice level. My translator chip rendered his Vexorian dialect into something comprehensible, though it couldn't quite capture the sheer disdain dripping from every syllable. "Officer Krello." According to the nameplate, that seemed entirely too shiny for someone with his attitude, leaned back in his hover chair, which groaned under his bulk. He was a typical Vexorian, 6 limbs, mottled purple skin, and an ego roughly the size of a small moon. Behind him, holographic displays showed new recruits going through their paces, young and eager cadets who probably thought war was some glorious adventure. I knew better. "Listen, human," Krell said, pronouncing the word like it was something he had scraped off his boot. "The academy is for serious candidates, not every species that discovers faster than light travel gets to play soldier." "I'm not here to play," I said quietly. He laughed, a wet bubbling sound that made my skin crawl. "Of course you are. You little bipeds always are. Do you have any idea what the training entails? The physical requirements alone would crush someone of your limited physiology." I slid my data pad across his desk. "My service record," Krello barely glanced at it. "I do not need to see your participation awards from whatever backwater conflicts you people engage in. The academy accepts candidates based on potential, not on whatever skirmishes you have survived against other primitives." Something hot and sharp twisted in my chest, but I kept my expression neutral. I had not come this far, had not survived this much to let some bureaucratic fool with delusions of superiority ruin this for me. I served 8 years in the Terran Colonial Marines, I said, each word carefully measured. 4 Tour, Battle of Proxima Station, the Siege of New Harmony, the Kepler Offensive. I have 43 confirmed kills, 7 medals of valor, and I led my unit through situations that would make your training simulations look like a pleasant afternoon. Krello's eye stalks finally focused on the data pad, his expression, which I was learning to read despite our species' vast differences, shifted from amused condescension to mild irritation. "Terran conflicts," he said, waving a dismissive tentacle, "mean nothing here. The threats we face in the wider galaxy make your species little territorial disputes look like childish squabbles." "Then I suppose I have much to learn," I said, fighting to keep the edge out of my voice. "That is why I am here." "You will fail," Krell said flatly. "Human physiology is not suited for modern warfare. You are too fragile, too slow, too limited. You lack the neural capacity for proper tactical integration. Your sensory range is pathetically narrow, and your combat endurance is laughable by galactic standards." I met his gaze, all 3 of them, and did not blink. "Then you should have nothing to worry about when I prove you wrong." Something flickered across his face, surprise, respect. Hard to tell. After a long moment, he jabbed a tentacle at a holographic form that materialized in front of me. "Fill this out. Report to intake processing at dawn. Cycle, bring nothing except what is on the approved list. You will be assigned quarters, equipment, and a training cohort. You will address all instructors as sir or madam, regardless of their rank. You will follow every regulation Every protocol, every order without question or hesitation. Understood and human, Krello leaned forward, his eye stalks converging on me with unsettling intensity. When you wash out, and you will wash out, do not come crying to me about unfair treatment or discrimination. The Academy does not care about your feelings, it cares about producing warriors capable of defending the Galactic Collective. If you cannot meet that standard, you do not belong here. I will meet the standard, I said, standing and gathering my things. I have met it before. As I left his office, I heard him mutter something in Vexoran that my translator did not catch, probably for the best. The walk back to my temporary housing gave me time to process what I had just signed up for. The Academy was legendary, the premier military training institution in known space, producing the elite forces that protected hundreds of worlds and thousands of species. Getting in was difficult. Surviving it was harder, and doing it as a human, according to everyone I had spoken to, it was impossible. Our species was too new to the galactic stage, too primitive, too underdeveloped. We had only achieved faster than light travel 20 years ago, and even that was thanks to stumbling across derelict forerunner technology. In galactic terms, we were infants barely worth noticing, which made the looks I got as I walked through the Academy grounds even more pronounced. A group of Thexian cadetses, tall crystalline beings who communicated through light pulses, stopped their conversation to stare at me. Their bodies flickered with what I had learned was amusement. Down another path, a pair of heavily armored kin turned their massive heads to track my movement, their predatory eyes assessing me like I was prey that had wandered into the wrong territory. I kept walking, head high, shoulders back. Military bearing was universal, even if respect was not. My quarters turned out to be a small cube, barely large enough for the narrow cot, storage locker, and hygiene station. Crammed inside, the walls were the same sterile gray as every other military installation I had ever seen, which was oddly comforting. At least some things were consistent across species. Snorts. I unpacked my few belongings: uniforms, personal hygiene items, a small holographic frame displaying a photo I tried very hard not to look at too often. The faces smiling back at me were ghosts now, memories of a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. That was why I was here, why I needed this. The demons did not go away just because the war ended, they just got quieter. Dawn cycle came too early and too bright. The Academy operated on a standard galactic time system that my circadian rhythm was still trying to adjust to. I dragged myself out of bed, threw on my new cadet uniform, which fit poorly and was made from some material that felt like sandpaper against my skin, and headed to the processing center. The assembly hall was massive, easily large enough to hold several thousand beings, and it was full. Cadets from dozens of species clustered in groups, chattering in languages my translator struggled to keep up with. The noise was overwhelming, a cacophony of sounds that ranged from melodic to harsh to downright painful. I found a spot near the back and waited. A figure materialized on the stage, literally materialized, phasing into existence like something from a bad science fiction holo vid. She was Fasari, a species I had only encountered in briefings, tall, ethereal, with skin that seemed to be made of flowing liquid light. Her Presence commanded immediate silence. "I am Commandant Vera," she said, her voice carrying effortlessly through the hall without any apparent amplification. "You are here because you believe you have what it takes to become defenders of the Galactic Collective. You are wrong." That got everyone's attention. "Most of you will fail," Vera continued, her luminous eyes scanning the crowd. "You will fail because you are not strong enough, not smart enough, not dedicated enough. You will fail because when the pressure becomes too great, you will break. You will fail because you will realize that the cost of this path is more than you are willing to pay." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Those of you who do not fail will be forged into something greater than yourselves. You will become the thin line between civilization and chaos. You will face horrors that most beings cannot imagine. And you will do so willingly because that is what duty demands." I felt something stir in my chest, recognition, maybe, or remembrance. "You will be sorted into training cohorts of 20 cadets each," Vera said. "These will be your squadmates, your competition, and your family for the duration of your time here. Their success or failure will affect your own. Learn to work together or wash out together." Holographic displays flickered to life throughout the hall, showing cohort assignments. I scanned quickly, finding my name listed under Cohort 47. I committed the other names to memory: Threx, Una, Brace, Quillen, among others I could not pronounce yet. "Report to your assigned instructors immediately," Vera commanded. "Training begins now." The hall erupted into controlled chaos as cadets moved toward their designated areas. I followed the holographic markers to training ground 47, where a knot of beings was already gathering. They were an eclectic mix. The tallest stood nearly 3 m, a heavily scaled Drather whose species was famous for their berserker warriors. The smallest barely reached my waist, some kind of insectoid whose name I had not learned yet. The rest fell somewhere in between, a rainbow of shapes, sizes, and evolutionary paths, and all of them stopped talking when they saw me. "A human," one of them said, a sleek, feline-looking creature with silver fur and way too many teeth. They let a human into the academy. Apparently standards have dropped, another muttered. This one covered in chitinous plates that clicked when he moved. I ignored them, taking my place in the formation. Rule number 1 of being the outsider: never let them see you react. Our instructor arrived moments later, and I immediately revised my opinion of Officer Krell as the most intimidating being I had met since coming here. Sergeant Vaughn was a Kryn, one of the apex predator species, standing well over 2 m of pure muscle, claws, and barely restrained violence. His species had evolved on a death world where everything was trying to kill everything else, and it showed. "Cohort 47, Vaughn growled, his voice like grinding stone. "You are mine for the next 16 weeks. I will break you down and rebuild you into something useful, or I will send you home in pieces. I do not care which." He began pacing in front of us, his clawed feet leaving gouges in the training ground surface. "The academy does not believe in coddling. You will be pushed beyond your limits. You will discover that your limits were illusions. You will curse my name, hate my existence, and dream of my painful death. This is normal. This is expected. This is part of the process. Born stopped directly in front of me, leaning down until his scarred snout was centimeters from my face. His breath smelled like raw meat and violence, and, "What do we have here?" he said, not quite a question, a little pink. "Mammal, tell me, human, do you have a name, or should I just call you meat?" "Cadet Rana Stark, sir," I said, keeping my eyes forward and my voice steady. Stark, Vaughn repeated, tasting the syllables. "Interesting, and tell me, Cadet Stark, what makes you think you belong here?" "I earned my place, sir." "Earned?" Vaughn chuckled, a sound like rocks tumbling down a mountainside. "You hear that, cadets? She earned her place. I am sure that will be of great comfort when she collapses during the first endurance run." Laughter rippled through the cohort. I kept my expression neutral. "We shall see," Vaughn said, straightening up. "Physical assessment begins in 10 minutes, full combat gear. Anyone who finishes in the bottom quartile runs it again. Anyone who cannot complete it at all is removed from the program immediately. Questions?" Silence. "Good. Gear up. Move." The locker room was a testament to the galaxy's biological diversity. Equipment racks held armor and gear designed for species ranging from aquatic to gaseous, from those who breathed oxygen to those who required sulfur compounds. Finding gear that fit my comparatively average humanoid frame was surprisingly easy. The armor itself was impressive. Adaptive nanomesh that could adjust to different environments. Integrated heads-up display, climate control, and enough built-in technology to make my old colonial marine gear look like children's toys. It was also heavy as hell, easily adding 20 kilos to my frame. I was still adjusting the chest plate when the feline cadet from earlier sauntered over. Up close I could see that her fur had a metallic sheen, and her eyes were a disturbing shade of gold. "You should quit now," she said casually, examining her claws. "Save yourself the embarrassment." "Thanks for the advice," I replied, not looking up from the armor clasps. "I am serious. Humans are not meant for this. You are going to get hurt, or worse, you are going to get one of us hurt trying to compensate for your weakness." I finally looked at her. "What is your name, cadet?" She blinked, surprised. "Sela." "Well, Sela, I appreciate your concern, but I did not come here to quit. I came here to become the best. If you have a problem with that, take it up with the commandant." Something flickered in her eyes. Respect, anger. "Hard to tell. Your funeral," she said, turning away, but I caught the hint of a smile on her face. The endurance course was designed to test every physical capability imaginable. It started with a 10 km run across varied terrain, sand, mud, water, and several sections that seemed to defy gravity. Then came obstacle courses that required climbing, crawling, jumping, and what I could only describe as controlled falling. After that, strength tests, agility challenges, and finally, a combat simulation that pitted us against holographic enemies while wearing full gear. It was brutal. Halfway through the run, my lungs were burning. 3/4 through, my legs were screaming. By the time I hit the obstacles, every muscle in my body was staging a rebellion, but I did not stop. I had run further, fought longer, survived worse. Pain was just information. Exhaustion was just a state of mind I could push through. Around me, other cadets were pulling ahead or falling behind. The Drather, whose name I learned was Threx, moved like a mountain given motion, slow but utterly unstoppable. Sela flowed through the course with liquid grace, her species' natural agility making the obstacles look trivial, others struggled, they're various. Physiologies working for or against them, depending on the challenge. I fell somewhere in the middle of the pack, which was better than I had feared, but not as good as I had hoped. The combat simulation was where things got interesting. Holographic enemies materialized with disturbing realism, their weapons firing stun rounds that felt real enough to make my point. Scenario was simple: defend a position against overwhelming odds while protecting a simulated civilian. I took cover behind a barrier, assessing the situation. 12 enemies, multiple approach vectors, limited ammunition. Standard stuff, except my cohort members were panicking. They are flanking. Someone shouted, "Too many targets." Another yelled. I tuned them out. Focusing on the problem, prioritize threats, maximize cover, control the engagement angles. Sela, I barked. High ground, left side. Suppressing fire, she hesitated for half a second, then moved. Her natural climbing ability got her into position quickly. Threx center mass, you are our anchor. The massive Drather grunted but held position, his thick hide absorbing hits that would have dropped lighter cadets. Everyone else staggered positions, overlapping fields of fire. Move. For a moment nobody responded, then slowly they began following my directions. We lost the simulation. Too much initial chaos, too little coordination, but we held out longer than we should have, and that got Sergeant Vaughn's attention. Interesting, he said, examining the performance data on his data pad. Very interesting. It seems our little human has some command experience. I said nothing, standing at attention, despite every muscle screaming for rest. Or perhaps Vaughn continued, circling around me like a predator, sizing up prey. She simply has a big mouth and likes giving orders. We shall see which it is. He addressed the entire cohort. Performance was pathetic. Half of you would be dead in a real engagement. The other half would wish they were. Stark, sir, you seem to think you can lead. Tomorrow you will have that opportunity. You are now cohort 47's acting squad leader. If they fail, you fail. If they succeed, you succeed. Let us see how much of a team player you really are. My stomach dropped, but I kept my voice steady. Yes, sir. As the cohort dispersed toward the showers and messel, I caught Sela's eye. She was smirking. Congratulations, she said. You just made yourself the most hated person in the unit. Story of my life. I muttered. She laughed, and I realized it was the first genuinely friendly sound I had heard since arriving at the academy. Maybe, just maybe, this would not be completely terrible. The first week as squad leader taught me that getting shot at by enemy combatants was significantly less stressful than managing 19 egos from across the galaxy. You cannot be serious, Quinn hissed at me. During our third day of tactical exercises, he was a Sarah Serpentine and covered in iridescent scales that shifted colors with his mood. Right now, they were a deep, angry red. You want me, a reconnaissance specialist, to take point position. I want you in a position where your thermal sensing gives us advanced warning, I corrected, pulling up the tactical map on my wrist display. Your species can detect heat signatures through solid barriers. That makes you our early warning system, not our scout. That is not how we operate, Quaylen insisted. That is not how you operated, I said firmly. Now you operate as a cohesive unit, which means using everyone's abilities strategically instead of just Throwing bodies at problems, he made a sound like steam escaping a valve, but he moved to his assigned position, small. Victories, the real problem was not the combat simulations or the physical training. I could handle those, my body remembered the patterns even if it complained about the execution. The problem was that nobody wanted to take orders from the species. Everyone considered Galaxy's newest and least impressive addition, except the simulations did not care about species pride, and neither did Sergeant Vaughn. Cohort 47, Vaughn announced on our seventh day, his voice carrying across the training ground with that special quality that made everyone snap to attention. You have disappointed me consistently. Your teamwork is abysmal. Your tactical awareness is non-existent. Your combat effectiveness would embarrass a civilian militia. He paused, letting that sink in while we stood in formation under the artificial sun that bathed the academy grounds in uncomfortably bright light. Therefore, you will participate in the gauntlet. A collective groan rippled through our ranks. Even I, with my limited knowledge of academy traditions, had heard about the gauntlet. It was a 72-hour continuous combat exercise that combined every nightmare scenario the instructors could devise into one extended hell. The gauntlet will test everything you have learned and expose everything you have failed to master. Vaughn continued. You will face hostile environments, simulated combat, rescue operations, and scenarios designed specifically to exploit your weaknesses. You will do this as a unit, or you will fail as a unit. Sela leaned slightly toward me, keeping her voice barely above a whisper. Last year, 3 cohorts did not complete it. One had to be medically evacuated. Cadet Sela, Vaughn's head snapped in our direction. Do you have something to share with the group? No, sir. Excellent, then you can volunteer to carry the communications equipment for the entire exercise. Extra 20 kilos should help you focus. Sela's ears flattened against her skull, but she did not protest. You deploy at sunset, Vaughn said. Start my office now. I followed him across the training ground to a prefabricated structure that served as his command post. Inside, holographic displays showed real-time data from dozens of training exercises happening simultaneously across the academy's vast grounds. Sit, Vaughn ordered, gesturing to a chair that was definitely not designed for human proportions. I perched on the edge awkwardly. I have been reviewing your file, he said, pulling up my service record on his display. 8 years for tour, multiple commendations. Battle of Proxima Station, where you held a breach point for 17 hours with half your unit dead or wounded. 16 hours and 42 minutes, sir, I said quietly. But who is counting? His eyes, amber and unsettling, fixed on me. You are the only human currently enrolled in the academy. Did you know that? I suspected, sir. Do you know why that is? Because most humans are smarter than I am, sir. Vaughn's mouth split into something that might have been a smile on a less terrifying face, because most humans lack the particular brand of stubbornness required to endure what we do to cadets here. Your species is soft, stark, physically weak compared to most galactic standards. Your reaction times are mediocre. Your sensory range is limited. Your natural armor is non-existent. Yes, sir. I had heard this speech in various forms from at least a dozen people since arriving. And yet Vaughn continued, you have not quit, you have not complained, you have not made excuses, you simply adapt and continue forward. Why? The question caught me off guard. Permission to speak freely, sir. Granted. Because I have nothing to go back to. I said, the words coming out more honestly than I intended. My unit was disbanded after the war. My family is gone. My home world feels like a museum of a life that does not fit anymore. This what we do here is the only thing that makes sense to me anymore. Vor studied me for a long moment. You are running from something. No, sir, I am running towards something. There is a difference. Is there? He turned back to his displays. The gauntlet will break you, Stark, not because you lack skill or determination, but because your body has limits that other species do not share. When your cohort needs you most, your biology will betray you. Then I will find a way to work around it, sir, or you will get yourself killed and take others with you. He waved a clawed hand toward the door. Dismissed. Prepare your team. I stood, saluted, and left before he could see the doubt creeping into my expression. Sunset came too quickly and brought with it the kind of nervous energy that preceded every major operation I had ever participated in. The cohort assembled at the deployment zone, checking gear and trying not to think too hard about the next 3 days. Listen up, I called out, pulling them into a tight circle. I know most of you think I am unqualified to lead this unit. You might be right, but for the next 72 hours, I am what you have got. So we are going to make this work. How inspiring, muttered Brace, a stocky Vorlon whose species resembled ambulatory boulders. Our fearless leader admits she is incompetent. I did not say incompetent, I corrected. I said, you think I am unqualified. There is a difference. I have led combat operations. I have kept people alive under fire. What I have not done is work with a multi-SES unit, which means I need all of you to communicate your capabilities and limitations clearly. No ego, no pride, just honest assessment. That got their attention. Threx, I pointed to the massive Drather. You are heavy, high durability, immense strength, but slower mobility. You anchor defensive positions and handle obstacles that would stop the rest of us. He nodded slowly. Sela, you are fast, agile, and have excellent situational awareness. You are our scout and rapid response. Quinn, thermal sensing makes you point detection. You spot threats before they spot us. I went through the entire roster, identifying each member's primary role based on what I had observed during training. Some looked surprised that I had been paying attention. Others looked skeptical that I could make it work. We have cadets who can survive vacuum exposure, process toxins, see in multiple spectrums, and communicate across distances without technology. I continued separately. These are interesting abilities. Together, they make us dangerous. The gauntlet is designed to break individual cadets. It is not designed to handle a unit that actually functions as a team. And what is your role? Sela asked. What does the fragile human bring to this formation? Fair question. I keep you alive, I said. Simply, I have done this before. I know how to read a battlefield, how to prioritize threats, how to make the hard calls when everything is falling apart. You bring the physical capabilities. I bring the experience. Deal. Silence stretched for several heartbeats. Then Threx rumbled deal, one by one, the others nodded or voiced agreement, even Quillen, though his scales remained a dubious orange color. Good, I said. Now let us go survive the unsurvivable. The gauntlet started deceptively simple. A 10 km forced march through varied terrain while carrying full combat. Loads easy enough, or it would have been if the instructors had not decided to spice things up with simulated artillery strikes, randomly generate obstacles and environmental hazards that ranged from flash floods to toxic gas clouds. 3 hours in, we lost our first cadet, Plex, an insectoid whose name I could finally pronounce correctly, stepped wrong during a river crossing and broke 2 of his 6 legs. The medics extracted him immediately, and just like that we were down to 19. Keep moving, I ordered, though my own legs were starting to protest the pace. We cannot help him now. The march transitioned into urban warfare scenarios. Holographic buildings materialized around us, complete with simulated civilians, enemy combatants, and enough chaos to make my old squad leader weep with nostalgia. Contact. Left side, Quaylen hissed, his thermal sensors picking up heat signatures through a wall. Suppressing positions, I called out. Threx, breach that door. Sela, high cover. Everyone else controlled advance. Watch for civilians. The firefight was brief but intense. Stun rounds hit like sledgehammers, even through armor. I took one to the shoulder that spun me halfway around and left my arm numb for precious seconds. But we cleared the building with 0 civilian casualties and all enemy combatants neutralized. The tactical display updated, showing our performance metrics climbing into acceptable ranges. Not bad, Sela said, checking her ammunition counter for primitives. I will take that as a compliment, I replied, trying to work feeling back into my shoulder. The scenario shifted again. Now we were in a zero-gravity environment responding to a hull breach. On a simulated space station, half the cohort had experience with vacuum operations, the other half, myself, snorts included, had to adapt quickly or die virtually. Tether points every 3 meters, I ordered, my voice distorted by the helmet comm system. Nobody goes anywhere without redundant safety lines. Brace, you are on structural repair. Yuna, help him. Yuna was Aquarin, able to alter her molecular density at will. In 0 gravity, she could compress herself down and slip through tiny gaps that would stop anyone else. She and Brace made quick work of the emergency patches, but the scenario was not about repairs. It never was. Multiple hostile signatures, Quaylen reported. They are using the breach as an entry point. Of course they were fighting in 0 gravity while managing inertia, limited mobility, and vacuum exposure was its own special kind of nightmare. We lost 2 more cadets to simulated injuries that would have been fatal in real conditions. 17 left. Hours blurred together. Day became night, became day again, and the scenarios just kept coming. Hostage rescue, biological contamination, defending against overwhelming odds, each one designed to find our breaking point and then push past it. I lost track of how many times I wanted to quit, how many times my body screamed that it could not possibly continue, how many times I watched cadets with superior physiology and capabilities handle situations with ease that left me gasping and struggling. But quitting was not an option. It had never been an option. Stark, Sela said during our brief rest. Period on hour 48. You look terrible. Thanks, I managed, forcing down a nutrient pack that tasted like recycled sadness. You are not exactly radiant yourself. She laughed tiredly. I thought humans were supposed to be tough. Your entertainment media certainly suggests it. Entertainment media lies, I said. We are fragile, short-lived, and absurdly easy to kill. What we are good at is being too stubborn to acknowledge when we should stop. Clearly, she paused. Why did you really come here, and do not give me that line about having nothing to go back to? Nobody subjects themselves to this level of punishment without a better reason. I was quiet for a long moment, watching the rest of the cohort in various states of exhausted recovery. Finally, I said, I lost my entire unit in the last battle of the war. 23 people I had trained with, fought alongside, considered family. We walked into an ambush that intelligence swore was not there. I was the only survivor. Sela's ears drooped. I am sorry. I kept asking myself why I lived when they did. Not what made me special or different or worthy of survival. I never found an answer. I crushed the empty nutrient pack, so I decided if I was going to keep living, it better mean something. Being here, learning from the best military minds in the galaxy, becoming someone who could actually make a difference in future conflicts. That means something, or it just means you have a death wish and are too proud to admit it. That too, I acknowledged. The final 24 hours of the gauntlet were designed to completely shatter whatever remained of our cohesion and willpower. Sleep deprivation, constant combat, scenarios that had no good solutions, only bad ones and worse ones. We were down to 15 cadets when the final scenario activated. Extraction mission, the tactical display informed us, hostile territory, civilians in danger, limited time, overwhelming enemy force. You will fail. Excuse me, I said to the empty air. This scenario is unwinnable. The display continued cheerfully. It exists solely to teach you how to make impossible choices. Good luck. Fantastic. I pulled up the mission parameters. 6 civilians trapped in a fortified position, at least 40 enemy combatants between us and them, in a hard extraction deadline of 30 minutes. Oh, and our communications were jammed. Our heavy weapons were malfunctioning, and we had multiple wounded. This is ridiculous. Brace growled. Nobody could complete this. Then we will be the first, I said, my mind already racing through options. Qualin heat signature analysis. Where are their heaviest concentrations? Main entrance and western approach, he reported. Eastern side is lighter, but it is exposed with no cover. Threx, can you make us cover? The big Drather studied the terrain, then nodded slowly. There are structural elements I can reposition. It will be loud. Loud is fine. Loud is a distraction. I pointed to the map. Threx creates cover on the eastern approach while making as much noise as possible. That pulls their attention. The rest of us hit the western side fast and hard while they are repositioning. Sela, you are on speed rescue. Get in. Get the civilians. Get out. Everyone else provides suppressing fire and creates an exit corridor. That is insane, someone said. That is the point, I replied. They expect us to fail, which means they expect conventional tactics. We give them chaos. Instead, it should not have worked. By every tactical measure, it was a terrible plan built on hope and desperation. but sometimes hope and desperation are enough. Threats tore apart the eastern fortifications like they were made of paper, creating a noise that echoed across the entire training ground. The enemy AI programmed to respond to threats shifted forces to counter what appeared to be our main assault. We hit the western side like a hammer. Sela moved so fast she was barely visible. Silver blur that reached the civilians and began herding them toward the extraction point. The rest of us laid down, suppressing fire that was more about volume than accuracy, keeping enemy heads down while our people moved. We lost 3 more cadets in the extraction, simulated kills, but they still had to stop fighting and watch from the sidelines as the rest of us struggled forward, but we got the civilians out, all 6 of them. As the scenario ended and the holographic environment dissolved, we collapsed. Where we stood, 12 cadets left out of 20, exhausted, battered, but alive. Sergeant Vaughn materialized on the training ground, studying his data pad with an expression I could not read. Cohort 47, he said finally, you have completed the gauntlet. Your performance was adequate. Coming from Vaughn, that was practically a glowing review. You lost 8 members, which is higher than I prefer, but lower than I expected given your squad composition. Your tactical flexibility improved significantly under pressure. Your ability to adapt to your leaders' unorthodox strategies was interesting. He turned his attention to me. Specifically, Cadet Stark, you pushed your body past reasonable limits multiple times during this exercise. You show signs of significant physical exhaustion and are borderline medically unfit for duty. Yes, sir, I said, too tired to argue. You also kept your unit focused, made difficult decisions under pressure, and achieved objectives that the scenario designers believed were impossible. Your ability to maximize your team's diverse capabilities while minimizing your own physical limitations shows promise. Was that praise? I honestly could not tell. All of you, medical evaluation immediately, then 72 hours recovery leave. After that we begin advanced tactical training. Vor's expression might have softened slightly, though it was hard to tell on a face designed by evolution to terrify prey species. You have proven you can survive basic training. Now we find out if you can become actual warriors. As we limped toward the medical facility, Sela fell into step beside me. You know, she said, when you first arrived, I thought you would wash out in a week. I may have been wrong. May have been. I am not ready to fully admit it yet. Give me time. I laughed, which hurt more than it should have. Fair enough, for what it is worth, she continued more seriously. You are not a terrible leader for human. High praise from someone who still calls me primitive. I call everyone primitive. Do not take it personally. She paused. Also, that thing you said about your unit, about losing everyone, I understand that more than you might think. My world was conquered when I was young. The academy is not just about becoming a warrior. Sometimes it is about finding a new purpose when the old one is taken from you. Then I suppose we both chose well, I said quietly. Medical facility processed us efficiently, treating various injuries that ranged from minor to moderately concerning. My own assessment was not great. Severe muscle strain, early signs of stress, fractures in both legs, and exhaustion so profound that the medical AI suggested sedation for forced rest. I Decline the sedation, sleep would come. When my body finally gave up arguing, with my mind back in my quarters, I collapsed onto the narrow cot and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere in the academy complex, dozens of other cohorts were going through their own versions of hell. Some would succeed, many would fail. I thought about Officer Krell and his certainty that I would wash out, about every skeptical look, every dismissive comment, every assumption that humans were too weak, too slow, too limited to belong here. Maybe they were right about the biology. Human physiology was objectively inferior to most galactic species in measurable ways, but biology was not destiny. We adapted, we learned, we overcame. That was what humanity had always done. From the moment our ancestors climbed down from trees and decided to walk upright into an uncertain future, and I would be damned if I was going to be the one who proved we did not belong among the stars. My data pad chimed with a message. I almost ignored it, but something made me check. It was from Commandant Vera. Cadet Stark, your performance in the gauntlet was noted. Continue as you have begun. The galaxy needs warriors who can think as well as fight. Do not disappoint me. I read it 3 times before I allowed myself to believe it was real. Then I closed my eyes and let exhaustion finally claim me. Outside my window, the academy continued its endless cycle of breaking and remaking those who dared to defend the collective. Somewhere in that chaos, I had found something I thought I had lost with my unit: purpose, belonging, a reason to keep fighting, and maybe, just maybe, proof that humanity belonged here after